And welcome while we read about the Mexican-American War. And the Mexican-American War was the war that completes Manifest Destiny. It lasted from May 13th, 1846 to 1848. The Mexican-American War was waged between the United States and Mexico from 1846 to 1848, and it helps to fulfill America's Manifest Destiny to expand its territory across the entire North American continent. So if you go back, you learn that Texas gained its independence from Mexico in 1836, making it a country. The end of that war was signed between Texas and Santa Anna, the president of Mexico at the time, and they signed a treaty called the Treaties of Velasco. Under threat of war, the United States had refrained from annexing Texas after Texas won its independence from Mexico in 1836, the same year they declared independence. And there was an issue here. One of the reasons was because in the Treaties of Velasco, Texas had a thing in there that Santa Anna signed saying that the border between Texas and Mexico was going to be the Rio Grande, the river. However, that was not the traditional border. The traditional border was actually the Nueces River, much farther north. So there's this zone of disagreement between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River, where Texas says, look here, we got this piece of paper, Treaty of Velasco, signed by your president, Santa Anna, and it says that the border is legally the Rio Grande. And Mexico's like, yeah, but you had a gun to his head. And traditionally, the border's always been the Nueces River. So we'll let you be a country, but you're going to have the border be the traditional one at the Nueces River. So there was this period of 9 years where Texas was a country, and they had some arguments and some fighting at that time. And Mexico had blatantly said that if Texas joined the United States, that would be a declaration of war because the United States has a much bigger military and can much better enforce that technical border of the Rio Grande. And Mexico was not going to stand for that. So in 1844, when President John Tyler restarted negotiations with the Republic of Texas, and it results in annexation, on May 13th, 1846, the United States Congress voted in favor of James K. Polk's because Tyler leaves office before he can finish the job. He gets the treaty signed and everything, but it's not, the ceremony isn't done and Texas isn't officially a state. So when Polk becomes president, almost immediately, everything's already done. You just have to finish it. Texas joins the United States, and it results in Mexico declaring war on Mexico in a dispute over Texas. So before I read the next part to you, that zone where it was disagreed, you had Texas saying the border with Mexico is the Rio Grande. So when they joined the United States, they showed the Treaties of Velasco to the United States and say, look, this is our border. Mexico signed this piece of paper saying this is our border. And America's like, cool, Rio Grande River. So they immediately put a General Zachary Taylor, with several thousand troops on that border to defend it. Mexico, as soon as they find out a little while later that Texas has officially joined, they send in their own army to defend the traditional border, the Nueces River. So obviously in this zone, these two armies clash, and the Mexican army attacks the American army, and the American army overwhelmingly just smashes the Mexican army. It's not even really a contest. The Mexicans attack, the Americans soundly defeat them, and this starts the American War. So this explains why Polk had told the United States Congress when he asked for a declaration of war against Mexico that the cup of forbearance has been exhausted. The seeking of peace has been no bueno. Even before Mexico passed the boundary of the United States, the Rio Grande, technically, invaded our territory and shed American blood upon American soil. I think Mexico might have a different point of view on that one, but technically he's right, just not traditionally. When war broke out against Mexico in 1846, in May, the United States Army numbered a mere 8,000, but soon 60,000 volunteers joined their ranks. The American Navy absolutely dominated the sea. Mexico really didn't stand a chance in the water. The American government provided stable, capable leadership. The capitalist economy of the expanding United States far surpassed that of the young Mexican states. Morale was definitely on the American side, and the war was a brutal rout. The American forces completely dominated the Mexican forces. At home, the Whigs, mostly from the North, complained bitterly about the war, many questioning Polk's methods as misleading and unconstitutional because If you go back, the only reason Texas got the Rio Grande as a border is because they straight up held a gun to Santa Anna's head under a tree going, you can sign the Treaties of Velasco or you can die. And so, of course, he's like, where do I sign? I'd like to go back home, please. Abolitionists rightly feared that Southerners would try to use the newly acquired lands, so any new land gained from the Mexican-American War, to expand slavery. And they were right. That's exactly what them Southerners going to do. Anti-war sentiment emerged in New England much as it had in the War of 1812. The war was formally concluded with the Treaties of Guadalupe, Hidalgo. And the treaty effectively, so the United States obviously gets the Texan territory, all of it, down to the Rio Grande, as well as New Mexico and California in the Mexican Cession. So not only did they get Texas, they get all of this. Mexico was paid $15 million, the same sum issued to France for the Louisiana territory. The United States Army won a grand victory. Although suffering 13,000 killed, the military of the United States won every single battle engagement of the war. Mexico was stripped of half its territory and was definitely not happy with being paid $15 million, which was not worth the same as it had been whenever the United States bought Louisiana. So as a summary, look above. In the end, the Mexican-American War had an immense impact on United States history. 13,000 American lives were lost, although only 2,000 of that was actually on the battlefield. The Mexican-American War adds over 500,000 square miles to the American frontier, and it helps America to fulfill its manifest destiny, extending it from the Atlantic Ocean all the way out to the Pacific, from Oregon, which already was, all the way down to California. So all the way across, it's now equal. The traditional continental 48 is what we call it today. That shape of the United States, that familiar shape, is now there. With this new territory, however, becomes disputes that are going to lead to further sectional divides. Is this new territory going to be slave? Is it going to be free? What's going to happen? And ultimately, it's going to be a major contributing factor to the Civil War. So I hope you're learning, and I hope you're having fun.